How many times has it happened to you on a busy highway? You see a homeless person with a cup and a sign begging for money, when clearly he's not, he or she doesn't have a job, nothing, out on the streets doing nothing. That's something called panhandling. It's another word for run or present participle. Panhandler just means someone who asks people passing by for money. Tourists have been warned not to give these panhandlers spare change. Every day she passes street corners for panhandlers back. That was from that's according to the dictionary. There's another thing called aggressive panhandling. That basically means it's a legal term for unlawful forms of public begging. Proponents of such legislation advocate placing limits on these activities. Some components lament what they perceive to be the criminalization of the homeless and argue that such laws are discriminating unlawfully enforced, like here in Corpus Christi. We'll get to that in just a minute. But CCPD does give tips on when to report these panhandlers. Here's Ashley Gonzalez.
Panhandling is when people ask for money, like you see here.
I wouldn't consider an issue. Does it happen? Yes. Is it rampant? No.
Aggressive panhandling is illegal and not tolerated in the city of Corpus Christi.
They approach you and you tell them no, and they continue to follow you. They use aggressive or obscene language. Basically, they don't take no for an answer.
Lieutenant Benya with the Corpus Christi Police Department says while aggressive panhandling isn't a huge problem in Corpus Christi, it's important.
It's important to follow tips so that this doesn't happen again. And you know, I'm tired of hearing this phrase, I won't do it again. It won't happen again. That's what I'm sick of. Aggressive panhandling isn't a huge problem in Corpus Christi. It's important for the community to report it. There's another way to help the homeless population. Panhandlers instead of just giving one person cash. There's charitable organizations here in Corpus Christi. This way you know where the money is going. There's organizations like the Salvation Army, Mission 911, and Catholic Charities are nonprofits dedicated to get back up on their feet. If they approach you telling you no, they continue to follow you using aggressive or obscene language, basically not taking no for an answer. If that ever happens to you, you need to call the police immediately or call the non-emergency number. Call the non-emergency number here in Corpus. I'm not going to give out the non-emergency number because the minute I do that, because I'm not giving out the non-emergency number on this broadcast. Because when I do that, you guys are going to be all over there, blah, 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 blah. So if you approach these, you need to call the police immediately. Call the non-emergency number. If it ever happens to you again, you walk away. If you have to, if it happens again, just walk away. Don't approach these people. Sometimes they just use it for drugs. And there's another word for it. There's another word for it called vagrant. A definition of the vagrant is a person without a settled home or regular work who wanders from place to place and lives by begging. That's a vagrant. They take the money and they use that money not for charity, drugs and alcohol. And it's happening here in the city. So I think it was almost almost years ago when there were like citations. So the question is, were there any other citations for aggressive panhandlers? Or were there also, what was there any other issue? So 2 years ago, Channel 6 did a special about homelessness in Corpus Christi about aggressive panhandlers. So the question is, were there any citations or arrests? Here's Seth Kovar.
So people will feel safe, but there's still plenty of panhandlers out there. My wife took my kids when I lived in Nebraska. I used to be a 4-star chef. I used to make $100,000 a year.
That's how Skippy, spelled S-K-P-Y, says he ended up on the streets. I ran into him at SPID in Staples Street, a common spot for panhandlers. But is that what he's up to?
I will not confirm nor deny those allegations.
He keeps it light with signs that read anything green, bad legal advice by the hour, and at least give me the finger. But sometimes panhandlers' requests for money go too far.
You know, you'd walk by, they'd ask, and then they ask again, they start yelling at you. We can curb that kind of behavior.
They can do that because of Corpus Christi's aggressive panhandling ordinance. Anywhere in the city, if a panhandler touches you or makes you afraid, police can step in. Without it, officers can only do so much.
It's a constitutional thing to be able to ask somebody for something, but then not to make them feel like they're in fear. So it was written for that purpose. And that's really been a good ordinance for us.
Good for compliance without making arrests. A Chris 6 open records request found that there have been 0 arrests or even tickets issued for aggressive panhandling. That's because, instead of reaching for handcuffs, officers let the panhandler know they're breaking the law and make them move along.
The goal is not to see how many citations we can issue. It's to curb behavior, and that ordinance did very well.
Officers have written tickets for panhandlers violating another ordinance. If you want to ask for money along the side of the road, you have to wear a reflective safety vest. Another Chris 6 open records request found that in the 6 years the ordinance has been on the books, there had been 20 tickets, and there's no word of any arrests. Assistant Chief Mark Schauer says arresting a homeless panhandler doesn't accomplish much because of how the municipal court system works.
All we're doing is putting you in a detention center for a couple hours until you can get processed, and then you're looked up.
Police also step in when businesses call. A worker at a store at Morgan and Crosstown who doesn't want to be identified says she has to call the cops every day because of panhandlers hassling her customers to the point where they turn away. It can be a problem downtown, too.
We do occasionally see panhandlers in the downtown area.
The Downtown Management District works hard to improve the area's image. That's why that group urges people to report panhandlers if they feel threatened.
Work with business owners to help combat this issue so that we can bring more people down here and let them know that it is a safe area for them to come.
Another way to combat the issue, just don't give panhandlers money. Assistant Chief Schauer says that person may be a scammer posing as homeless. And he says they might use the money for booze or drugs instead of food.
When you're giving to folks, the best thing you can really do is give to a charity, give to a nonprofit that can filter that money and use it appropriately.
Like finding housing and jobs for people like Skippy.
Some people give me dirty looks, some people laugh. It's all good though. As long as they make eye contact, that's worth it.
The Downtown Management District created the Downtown Need Network for people who want to help panhandlers but don't simply want to give them cash. The information's on cards like this one that you can find at several downtown businesses. Lee?
All right, Seth, thank you very much. Now, if you do have some spare change you'd like to donate, there are 6 donation stations throughout the city. Now, basically, these are old parking meters that have been converted to collect change that's then donated to local groups that do help out and support the homeless.
Like the Salvation Army and the 911 mission, you have a couple. There's a viral video that happened on TikTok back on November 12th, where a 5-year-old went to Hooters, and when the mother posted on TikTok, she had negative reaction. We'll hear from her when we come back. Stay with us. Now let's move on to something that I rarely talk about in this broadcast. Imagine your 5-year-old saying, "Mommy, guess what I want to go for my birthday?" What do you want to go for your birthday? I want to go to Hooters. Are you crazy? You want to go to Hooters? Yes, Mommy. And your dad's all like, "Yeah, boy." But it really happened. They went to Hooters. The mom filmed it and posted social media, and you're gonna hear from this mother. So here's Ann. Here's Ann.
It's a birthday party for an adorable 5-year-old boy named Xander. But Mom didn't take him to Chuck E. Cheese. They're celebrating at Hooters.
Oh, it's Hooters! This is my best friend Xander. He's turning 5 years old.
In their iconic orange short shorts and low-cut shirts, the waitresses give the birthday boy a special serenade.
And we're here to sing for you.
The video looks pretty innocent, but when the boy's mom posted the video on TikTok, she was lambasted. Who brings a child to Hooters? Seems more like Dad's birthday than the kids. So much for protect the children. Go just a few angry reactions. And here's the birthday boy today with his mom Darby at home in Iowa. What did you think when you saw all of those negative comments?
It's not a big deal, really. I mean, we went to Hooters for wings.
Xander sure looks like he's having a ball.
Can I get a round of applause?
The Hooters birthday video now has more than 7 million views, and not everyone is outraged. That smile on his face is priceless. Bro living the dream. Xander, was it a memorable birthday? Did you have a good time?
Yeah.
Mom has this message for the haters.
If that's something that you wouldn't do with your child, that's great, but he's my child and I thought it was okay.
In fact, Xander's mom is thinking of taking him back to Hooters for his 6th birthday.
Hey, Mello, Hooters back for his 6th birthday. Are you crazy? He's a child. Give me a break. If... A child at Hooters? No. I don't want to be thinking about that. Oh God, I'm crying right now. I'm sorry. In 6 years that I've done this show, I have never, ever laughed so hard at a story like this, where a 5-year-old son goes to Hooters for his birthday. What about Twin Peaks? I'd imagine that stuff happening at the Twin Peaks. And like, we wouldn't, let me tell you. Okay, I'm good. I don't have a problem with taking children to restaurants. Like, usually sit-down restaurants like, like Chili's or IHOP, Denny's. But Hooters, I can't even say it with a straight face. It's a dad thing. But let me tell you something else. If two of my little cousins wanted to go to Hooters for a birthday, I would block them out of the way. Nope, you're too young to go in. You're too young. You have to be at least 18 or older. Unless you want to go in for wings, that's your choice. I mean, Hooters is the adult thing, not the kid thing. I mean, when you get exposed a child to, like, man, I'm not going into that because I'm gonna have a lot of haters go on here, blah 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 blah. But there is something I would like. We as a society, we already have bars. I mean, you can't go into a bar until you're 21, present ID. That's a good thing. But if you have under 21, and if you have under 21 ID, then you're probably clear to be going in. But adult restaurants need to be not, I mean, if you want to go to adult restaurants like a Twin Peaks and Hooters, those are adult restaurants. We should like to have a city law that says children cannot be entering adult restaurants without an adult. That's it. And if it's for birthday, then the adult has to be present. So that's the way I feel about that. I feel like as a society, we should have a law that says you cannot be going into an adult restaurant without an adult. It could happen. It may happen after this episode airs, but I probably can't be sure. His parents claimed he was a thief and a liar, but for most parents, their solution for dealing with him would be unthinkable. We'll meet him coming up next. Stay with us. Let's bring up to speed on some things that we're following so far. There was an article, like it doesn't go away ever, says this was from a survivor of the shooting in Parkland. 11-year-old Chloe survived the mass shooting at Bob Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas in May of this year. Her best friend, 10-year-old Amiri, was among the 19 students and 2 teachers who were killed. Chloe's parents, Jamie Rubin, say their daughter is experiencing survivor's guilt. Christine's survivor is the 2018 school shooting at Majority Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and says she knows all too well the impact that the mass shooting can have on families and survivors for years after tragedies take place. And that was from the survivor who went on Dr. Phil. Also in Uvalde, from the Business Insider. 5 months after the worst school shooting in Texas history, Greg Abbott easily triumphed in the Uvalde community. Here's the 3 bulletin points. Greg Abbott won the race to remain governor 5 months after the worst school shooting in Texas. The families of the victims of the attack expressed their disappointment in victory, of which 21 people dead doesn't change people's minds, and whatever they told the Tribune. Beto O'Rourke, who challenged Abbott in a race, ran on a mandate to raise minimum age to purchase an AR-15 style rifle. Many of the families directly impacted by the shooting hoped he'd be the next governor of Texas. Indeed, in 2021, Abbott signed a law allowing people to carry handguns without licenses. Unfortunately, 21 people dead doesn't change people's minds, according to Jasmine Carras, whose 9-year-old sister Jacqueline was killed in Bob Elementary. And Kimberly wrote on Twitter saying, "One thing's for sure, I will never stop fighting for my children and yours." According to the Tribune, he described O'Rourke's loss and Abbott's win as crushing, but said it means that the fight goes on. The fight goes on. Exactly. I had to agree with these people here. We need laws to protect us from... We need laws like this to protect us from all this stuff. We need to raise the age of requirement to get a gun. Not just any age. I mean, what if a 5-year-old gets a handgun? A 10-year-old gets that handgun. He doesn't even know how to use it right. It's like we talked about last season. We did a special on guns in America, Day in the Life, where we talked about children and guns. We talked about gun safety and how to stinking teach your child to use a gun whenever someone's in danger. Let's face it, your child's gonna get into your guns one day, and if we have to do another one, then if we gotta do another Guns in America Day in the Life thing in a public place, then so be it. Because one day your child will get into a gun, and by the time that happens, it's gonna be too late. No updates in Oxford yet, but once the trial goes on, we'll let you know, because it's 2 months away, and we'll keep you posted what's going on. Meanwhile, Nicholas Cruz is still in prison, and any updates about that investigation, the attorney, we'll let you know. You heard me yesterday talk about Aaron Carter's death and Carter versus Carter. Up next, you're gonna be a family who the mother says doesn't trust her son because of all the things that he's done. There's 2 sides to every story. The mother, the father, the son, and the grandmother and the sister. Lots of people are in this. Stay with us. If there's one rule at the heart of family life, it's this. No matter what happens, families stick together. But most of us feel we can't trust our families. Who can we trust? That question is at the heart of our next story about a family feud and the family that's torn apart. Recently, I watched this video several times and I couldn't believe what I just saw. So, here's Ann Curry.
It looks like a picture postcard from Middle America. A tranquil place where you might expect family values are still prized. But underneath the pretty pictures lies another story that tests the most profound human relationships. It pits a son against a mother against a grandmother, and parents against the state. It all began with a parent's fear that their teenager was spinning out of control.
That's what I always heard. We can't trust you, we don't trust you.
The lying and manipulating he was so good at it.
Diane Weber, a parent in Omaha, Nebraska, says raising a teenager forced her to act like a prison guard.
The scariest stuff was the razor blades and pocket knives.
She says her son Dan was always so untrustworthy that she was reduced to frisking him.
You're giving him a search before he goes to school.
Periodically. You don't do anything regularly with Dan or he knows it's coming.
You actually put your hands in his
I
pocket
put it in the back pocket
as he was trying to head out the door.
before he went out the door to the bus.
In addition to razor blades and pocket knives, she says she found these kinds of items she was convinced were stolen. Cigarettes, cigars, lighters, diet pills, and wine, all hidden in his closet. She suspected he was stealing for years, but it wasn't until he was 13 that she caught him. On a day she unexpectedly came home early from work, she saw her husband's car was missing. She sensed immediately that her son had taken it.
I didn't know if he was in the ditch, killed in a car accident. We live by very busy streets.
She was frantic by the time she got the phone call that told her what happened. Dan had taken his father's car for a ride to Kmart, where he was caught shoplifting chewing gum. Diane and Ken Weber, a highway construction foreman, were disturbed by Dan's attitude when they picked him up.
Like he really didn't think what he did was wrong at all.
Yelling absolutely did no good with Dan. He's blank. He was just numb to anything.
What do parents do when a child misbehaves and shows no remorse? What these parents did is raising questions about whose rights are more important, a parent's or a child's. The family tried counseling, but the parents say Dan showed little signs of progress. And when he became a teenager, they began to fear the worst.
We just knew he had to get his act together. He was going to be going into high school. There was a lot more that he could have gotten involved in high school. That scared us.
He was about to change schools and was going through physical changes as well. His parents saw a boy transform into a young man in just 1 year.
What happened to you that made you go, okay, that's it?
I just had enough. I mean, we're talking years and years and years of stuff. And I think I just had it. It's like, why do I have to do this? No.
What happened next would shock many parents.
I took him in.
Diane says she was exasperated when she made this threat.
If you think you have it so bad here, how would you like to go to a foster home and just see how bad it is?
Dan went to school that day without giving his mother an answer. But when he returned, she says he told her something she will never forget.
That's what I want to do. Let her foster home. I was just taken aback.
Why'd you let him be the one to decide if in fact that happened? Why let him decide to go to foster care? Why not keep him?
We had made the threat, and you have to go through with it. You can't make idle threats one after another because he knows that's all it's going to be.
Diane took Dan to the Sarpy County Courthouse. She said she had him charged for stealing her car in order to get him into the juvenile court system.
He didn't even want to come home to pack his own bags, which, that really flustered me. I mean, how much more rejection can a parent have from a child?
Didn't that hurt?
Yes, he can't even come by to say goodbye. It hurts. It still hurts.
How can you take your son, your flesh and blood, the child you raised ever since he was born, and give him away to strangers?
We didn't give him away.
Turn him over to strangers.
They're there to help. That's what we thought.
But you expected that he was going to learn a lesson. So you expected that it wasn't going to be fun for him. How could you do this, Diane?
You would do whatever it took to get your child help.
How long did you think he was going to be in foster care? What was your plan?
Maybe a week.
When Diane returned from the courthouse without Dan, her own mother, Dan's grandmother, confronted her.
She said, I gave him away. Just bluntly, I gave him away.
She says she never said that she gave him away.
Said it twice. And I'll never forget that.
Dan's grandmother said she quickly left in tears and called his aunt, who found him sitting in an office at social services. If your sister was trying to teach Dan a lesson,
this definitely was not the way to do it.
Dan went home with his aunt for 4 days. When his parents found out, they were furious.
They had coached him all weekend about how horrible we were. And that he would never have to come home.
The Webers insisted their son come home, but they weren't prepared for his anger about what had happened.
He was horrible. I've just never seen him like that.
Why wouldn't he be angry, Diane?
Why shouldn't we be angry?
It was actually scary. You know, we'd never, ever seen him like this before.
That night when he came home, he was physically and verbally violent, slamming doors, screaming, yelling. I was terrified.
So terrified of Dan's rage that she believed he would turn to violence.
What were you thinking he might do?
We didn't know.
End up killing. I wasn't, mothers. I was never fearful for myself, but that's just, I think, a mother's thing. Check on your family. But I didn't know. I really thought that he would do something to Ken. The rage, the anger. Yeah.
For the next 2 months, Ken and Diane say they tried to work with Dan without any interference from relatives. But then, Diane discovered something she felt was sabotage. Supportive cards from relatives, secretly delivered to Dan by a friend.
And it just was undermining everything we had tried.
Diane had had enough. After another argument, she called social services. Dan said he wanted out too. She dropped him off at the courts again. He was 14 years old. That was the last time Dan and Diane had spoken face to face. That was 3.5 years ago. How could a mother and son have reached such an impasse? The mother tells one story, the son tells another.
My mom said once to me that she would never be able to trust me until I proved her wrong. She never gave me a chance to prove her wrong.
Dan says his mother was always too strict with him, but summers were worse, because while she worked, he stayed home by himself.
And my mom left me a list of chores to do all day. I had to keep the curtains closed. Couldn't answer the door, couldn't answer the phone or talk on the phone.
And you couldn't go out and play with friends?
No.
And nobody came over?
Nope. I didn't have people over. And then one day I found my dad's car keys. So I kind of took off.
And you ended up at Kmart.
I got caught for shoplifting a pack of gum.
What was going through your mind?
I was happy. I was going out and doing what I wanted to do.
This was the first time you did anything wrong?
Pretty much, I feel.
Dan says he bought most of the things his mother says she found in his closet with money from his piggy bank. He says the razor blades were harmless tools for an architecture project at school. And his pocket knife? That was a gift from his father for Boy Scouts.
I got $2 a week for allowance every week. And every week, usually, it went into that piggy bank.
Dan admits acting up when he was younger, but said it was normal teenage stuff.
Yes, in school I did act goofy and...
Did you have behavioral problems? Did you misbehave?
Occasionally, yes.
Such as
like all little kids do.
Dan Weber has a completely different version of the day his mother threatened to send him away. He says a battle broke out when she searched his pockets and discovered money, which she had forbidden him from taking to school.
It's $2, and she found it, and she pretty much flipped out about that.
What did she do?
She got really angry. I broke one of her rules. She yelled at me, slapped me.
But Dan says he never said he wanted to go to foster care.
I said, I don't know. And I guess she took it as a yes.
Did you possibly say yes?
No.
Why wouldn't you have said yes?
I wouldn't have said yes. It's just not a question you'd ask somebody. Especially your own kid. She just did it like nothing. Like it didn't mean anything. That's what I felt, that she just didn't want me anymore.
Dan went to a foster home for 3 months and then to Boys Town, a home for troubled children, for a year.
It is New Citizen Day here at Boys Town.
The young man who his parents say was such a headache not only completed the Boys Town program, but managed to achieve a B+ average.
This is your first dog.
Now he lives with his grandmother.
She's always been the best person.
But that's not the end of it. Although he left his parents' home years ago, there's someone in that house who he says he really wants to see. When he left their home, she was only 5 months old. But he can't forget her.
He had a picture on his dresser, and everybody knew that that was his sister.
His house parents at Boys Town remember Dan's fondness for his sister.
You know, Halloween. I wonder what she's going to go as for Halloween or Christmas.
There you go.
Megan Weber is now 4 years old. She even has a little sister, almost 2, who Dan has never seen or met. Dan asked the court to allow him visitation with Megan, and the court ordered it. 1 hour a month supervised. But the Webers appealed the order.
What are you so scared of? What's he gonna do? What's the worst? 1 hour could lead to unsupervised visitation. Then would Megan not come home one day? Would we find her in a ditch? This kid is dangerous.
Why do you want to see your little sister bad enough to sue your parents?
She's my sister. I mean, she's my family. I haven't had any brothers or sisters all my life. And then finally, when I have a sister, 5 months later, all this happens.
Some people watching this might think that you're only pursuing this, trying to see Megan, because you want to get back at your parents.
I really don't care what my parents do right now. They've started their new life, and I'm starting mine.
Is Dan Weber a dangerous young man, or is he just a normal teenage boy who made some mistakes while trying to grow up? Why did you take him, Agnes?
Oh, I love him.
His grandmother is just one of half a dozen people who told us Dan has never been a problem.
Dan never acted up.
Even though he dropped out of school, he's studying to get his high school equivalency diploma, and he's working full-time at a hotel laundry service.
He gave me no reason not to trust him.
The deputy county attorney agrees.
He was being a very good kid. He was following the rules. He'd been participating in therapy. He'd been doing everything the court had asked of him.
This may all be true, but kids have been known to act one way in public and another way with their parents. But could Diane Weber be right about her son? Are there secrets locked in this family's past that can explain what happened to this mother and son?
Somebody's lying here. I know Diane. That's why
you or Dan are lying.
So, we've heard every side of the story, but what are the family secrets and who is telling the truth? We're going to find out next. Stay with us. We're talking about a family feud that has been divided one family. And this family that I'm talking about is Diane, Ken, and Dan Weber, and her grandmother, and her sister. This family's all tied to a family feud because of one person. Diane's son, Dan. If you heard before, he was stealing a lot of things. Now we're going to look at those family secrets that go back years. So once again, here's Ann Curry.
Diane Weber is convinced her son is a compulsive shoplifter who constantly lied to her. Some people might be watching this and thinking, he's probably not telling the complete truth. He probably stole some things he's not admitting to.
When I was younger.
What did you steal when you were younger?
Like pencils and pens at school, things like that.
Did you steal from stores besides a pack of gum? Ever? No. Never?
Mm-mm.
For everything you're talking about, the wine, the cigarettes, you purchased all of it.
The cigarettes? No.
So you stole cigarettes?
Right.
Let's go back to the day Dan got caught with his father's car at Kmart when he was 13 years old. This was the first time you did anything wrong?
Pretty much, I feel.
But later in our interview, Dan changed his story.
They knew I had been taking it.
Oh, so this wasn't the first time you took the car?
No.
You took the car a lot?
About, I remember 5 or 6 times.
And how about that pack of gum he admitted to stealing from Kmart?
I got caught for shoplifting a pack of gum.
That's not true either. This lost merchandise document from Kmart says it wasn't a pack of gum. It was actually 52 packs of gum in multi-packs found stuffed in Dan's pants. But it's still just chewing gum. How unusual was Dan's behavior? To get some answers, we sat down with Dan's former classmates, this group of seniors from Millard High School, and their parents. Did any of you ever take your parents' car without permission? No one in this group admitted to doing that, but they all said the other things Dan did were quite common. Have you lied?
Yes.
Have you lied to your parents?
Yes.
Have they know what the lie was afterwards? I mean, did they ever find out?
Oh, yeah.
Based on what this group had read about the case, the majority said Dan's parents overreacted to normal teenage missteps.
The last thing you can be as a parent of a teenager is rigid.
Flexibility is the name of the game.
Maybe Dan's behavior was getting out of control in his parents' eyes, and maybe they did just want to scare him by sending him to foster care temporarily. That still doesn't explain how they got to this point. Parents and a child not communicating for 3.5 years.
We have stolen a couple of things from stores. Do you think that justifies what your mother did?
No. I know people have done a lot worse, and their parents don't just throw them away.
This wasn't the first time Dan felt his parents had given up on him.
When you were very young, did you get a lot of attention? Hugs? Kisses?
No, not really.
You can't remember a single hug?
Mm-mm.
From either parent?
No.
His story is remarkably similar to the way his mother remembers her own childhood.
The word love was never mentioned in my household, and I never got a hug as far as I know. I mean, I have no recollection of any of that.
Diane says there was not enough love in your home for her. She didn't get hugs. She didn't get kisses. She felt she wasn't loved.
Diane had a hard time receiving love.
You hugged her, you kissed her, she just didn't receive it?
She was kind of untouchable. Don't touch me, leave me alone type of a person. Prickly pear.
What really happened between Diane and Dan? To find out, we went back 3 decades to this house in Mapleton, Iowa, where Diane Weber grew up. She was one of 5 children raised by a young divorced mother. Her mother says back then, Diane was the one getting into all the trouble.
She got uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable, you said. The same word she uses to describe Dan.
She was?
She actually describes you as being a troubled kid.
She was my trouble. No, I didn't have any problems.
But Diane admits she wasn't perfect. When she was 15 years old, she got pregnant. She was an unmarried sophomore in high school when she and Ken had Dan.
You broke the biggest rule that there is, really, for a teenage girl.
Tell everybody, it only takes one time.
Diane says her mother was not supportive of her pregnancy, but Agnes insists she did help Diane.
I was in the delivery room with her, holding her hand while she was having the baby.
She may have been in the delivery room, Diane says, but only to make her daughter feel worse.
While I'm being stitched up after an episiotomy, which I didn't even know what an episiotomy was, just put a couple extra stitches in there so this doesn't happen again. So, supportive? I don't think so.
Oh, my goodness. She said a number of things that she says you said.
Oh, no. None of that's true. See, and that's another history Diane has. Way back when she was just a little kindergartner, she would make up stories. Diane was a habitual liar from the time she was little. Relatives have to say something. I mean, they have to say something to discredit us.
The more we looked into this story, the more confusing things got. From 3 generations of family members, we heard charges and countercharges. We heard graphic stories of brutal beatings, all vigorously denied by those accused. It became almost impossible to figure out the truth about the Webers.
But 3 years of abandonment.
The deputy county attorney has this theory about what happened with the family.
What the parents have said on the record is their child is dangerous. What the nuances of this case and the undercurrents indicate is that Mrs. Weber is so angry at her family that because he has had contact with them, she's basically disowned her son.
Stevens believes Dan has every right to visit with his sister Megan and is helping him pursue his lawsuit against his parents. She argued his case before the Nebraska Supreme Court.
Are you sure you're not hurting her in the end by robbing her of her possible relationship with her older brother?
What would hurt and confuse her more is to see him an hour a month against our wishes. What kind of failure are we setting Megan up for when the court can order her to do something against her parents' wishes?
When Dan turns 19 in another year and a half, the courts cannot force the Webers to allow Megan to see Dan. His best hope to see his sister is to reconcile with his parents.
I'm willing to. They need to be willing to. I'd like to be able to talk to them, have a relationship with them.
Is there some part of you that wishes that you were still home, that wishes that this never happened?
My dad, everybody used to love my dad, all my friends, because he was the best dad. He bought me a motorcycle.
it up for me, let me ride it around.
He says he misses you. He says he remembers great times with you.
Oh, we had a lot of good times together.
And he wishes he could have you back in his life again.
Yeah.
Do you want him back?
If I knew he was well, yes. But at this point, I don't know that. You know, we did have a lot of good times growing up, but we also had a few times where he would look me straight in the eye and lie to me over and over and over again.
In fact, Ken and Diane say if the law would allow them, they would terminate their parental rights.
We've tried to.
Why give up your parental rights?
At least it would get us and our kids out of court. Because we don't.
But the Nebraska Department of Social Services won't let them do that.
If you as a parent decide to have children, you do have a responsibility to care for those children. And as long as you can care for them, you need to be a part of that process. Come around.
But for now, the Webbers say they no longer want to be part of that process. Even though their son hasn't committed any serious crimes, they feel it was just a matter of time.
Those are the things that we tried to avoid by getting him the help when we did. We didn't want to get to that point. We didn't want to have him end up in jail for the rest of his life.
What does it say about your family that you can talk about this with me in front of millions of people, but you can't talk about it with your own mother?
Some people in my family are stubborn.
Have you thought about how to prevent this from happening to your kids?
Sure, I'd let them have their freedom. You know, every kid makes mistakes. And they learn from their own mistakes.
I had a lot of things to say about this because I watched this several times, and believe me, I had a lot of things to say, so I'm going to have that for you on Monday. That is giving me a break for this Saturday going to Sunday. We'll see you again if you give me a break Monday. I hope you had a great day. For all of us here at Give Me a Break and YouTube, have a good night.